What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, I mean, look, it's been a long time coming for this, but we can finally say that on Guarani Vision, we've had some good episodes here and there. You know, we've had some positive results in Paraguayan football throughout everything that's been going on. But I can safely say that at least in my memory, and maybe you guys can correct me, I think this is probably going to be the happiest episode we've had ever since we started doing this almost 4 years ago. Because obviously, we are speaking just days after Paraguay's two memorable performances against Uruguay and Brazil. Obviously, two results that have really united an entire nation and made all of us very happy, those that supported this Paraguay team for quite some time. And honestly, I think it's certainly a long time coming. You know, we'll obviously talk about what they did against Uruguay, getting that 0-0 draw in Montevideo, and of course, the 1-0 win against Brazil in the Defensores del Chaco. Fede, you were there, you were at the stadium. You know, we'll start with you there first. I mean, how are you? How are you feeling now, just literally 3 days removed since that famous win against Brazil, the first one in 16 years? I mean, I feel like we're still on a high that's probably going to last until the next month when we go back to these qualifiers, but I feel like, even for me, I feel like I'm like a kid again, or for maybe for you guys, you feel like you're young adults, and that we see a Paraguay team redefine itself, have their identity, and get big results against big teams. I'm happy as hell, man. I guess that's to put it straightforward. I'm sure both of you as well. But Fede, you being at the ground, you being in Asuncion, you being in the country, I feel like the 6 million, including yourself, are very happy after what we saw, firstly on Friday night, but also on Tuesday night as well.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. It's been a fantastic week, just like you said it, right? I mean, probably the best week since we've covered the national team as a podcast. And we've been waiting for this, for a game like this, for a combo for 2 games, because we got 4 points out of 6. And we've been waiting for something like this for such a long time. I totally get your words, your expressions. I mean, I felt like a kid again. I did not sleep that night after the game. I got to be honest with you guys. I mean, I don't know. The game after Brazil was done around. I don't know. I left the stadium around 12:30, almost 1 o'clock, and I got home around 2:30. I went to sleep around 4, 5, around 5 a.m. So I can't even put into words everything that went through my mind. Just watching the game, enjoying it. Obviously, suffering because we scored very early against Brazil, and we had to suffer most of the match, but we were able to do it. And I think we witnessed something that the FA really wanted to see this time around, which was see this team do it like they haven't been able to do it these last times going to the World Cup. And now it looks like we're finally on our way. It looks like we're back on track. I would even say we witness also, the Alfaro effect, the lettuce effect. I don't know how to call it, because I mean, this guy really took over, and he looks like he just proved that he's the right man for the job in just 2 games so fast, right? And he had the right strategy for both games. He got into the players' heads. He did everything to prepare these 2 games, and everything just went tremendously well for Paraguay in both matches. So I'm really happy that we got to say goodbye to Luis Suarez, somebody that we really suffered in so many games. And he was not happy about the tie at Centenario. He was not happy that he couldn't score on us on his last game. And we were really happy about that result, but it wasn't going to be a full result if we didn't do something against Brazil. And that was an epic game. That is one to remember. Obviously, something that we haven't been able to do in so many years. I think it was. I felt like it was back in 2010. To be honest with you guys, I had that feeling, of am I watching Alfaro? Am I watching Tata Martino? Am I watching that team from 2009? And what am I watching? Everything was going through my head. I was going through so many emotions, and I had to go to the locker room after the game. I saw the players. I got to talk to them and to share that emotion, give some of them a big hug. I hadn't seen Fabian Balbuena in such a long time, and and now he's the captain of our national team. It was so good to see him. I got to talk to Diego Gomez also, who scored the greatest goal I've seen probably all year. And just like you said, Roberto, we got 4 points, and in the way that you said we were gonna get the 4 points, because I said that we were gonna get 4 points, but it didn't go my way. It went the way that you said it. So I'm really happy about that. And yeah, just before giving it to Ralph, before giving it back to you guys, I had the opportunity to go into the locker room, not only a Paraguay side, but I did go to a Brazilian side also. I wanted to see Vinicius. I actually wanted Vinicius' jersey or a photo with him, but he wasn't very happy. And they left a couple of things back. There was no funky being sound. There was no funky. You couldn't hear any music in the locker room. Usually Brazilians have a lot of fun in the locker room. But I found these glasses. I don't know. They left them back here. I don't know if they were gonna probably have a celebration after the game with these, but I found these in the locker room. So if Vinicius lost them here in Asuncion, maybe I can ship them to Madrid or something, maybe for his next celebration. But because he had nothing to celebrate here, guys. And before we move forward, I just wanted to take a second, Roberto, because you just mentioned, and it just reminded me, we just went through our 4th anniversary, September 10th, I believe it was, right? 2010, when we put up our first YouTube video. And we're almost at 200 videos. I was just looking, so many hours recording, and I just wanted to congratulate you guys, and let's go on forward. And with this win against Brazil, oh guys, we got 4 more years. We got 2026 coming up. I'm looking so much, and we got so much to talk about in this very special episode after this very special week for our national team.
It seems like it was written in the stars, really. September 10th, that was the game on Tuesday. I think it was written in the stars, really, to get that win. And yeah, I don't know what's going on with Vinicius. Maybe he's still stuck in Juan Cáceres' pocket after what we saw. So maybe he's probably forgotten a lot of his stuff, like those glasses. But yeah, Ralph, I mean, I think we can echo everything that Fed has said. I think certainly from everything that we've kind of wanted to see from this Paraguay side after they kind of disappointed us for quite some time, at least in the start of this qualifiers with 2 different coaches, a whole different list of players. You know, they needed this statement win. They needed the statement, combo that this month in general. I think this is something to really build on. And of course, I think people are genuinely happy and excited, but we also know that we still have a long way to go. Paraguay are still a team that scored only 2 goals in 8 games. They're still in this final spot to qualify for the playoffs. So again, big win and all, but we still have a long way to go. But at least we could still feel very positive and very happy from what we saw on Friday in Montevideo and then on Tuesday in Asuncion.
Yeah, I think that's right. Hi, everybody. I mean, same as Fede. After Tuesday night, it was hard to sleep, right? The adrenaline of watching that big win, and you just want to watch back the goal. Like, I've seen Diego Gomez's goal 100 times or something from all the different angles. It's such a good strike. But I think what's really positive about this is I remember when Barros Schelotto came in to Paraguay, he had like 6 games, right? It was basically, he was coming in and he had 6 games to try and turn it around. Alfaro has come in at this point and it's a similar situation, right? He has these 6 games this year that's going to make or break Paraguay's chances for qualification. And he's talking about, he said, the first phase is like everyone's feeling each other out. We're in the second phase, which is recovery, recuperación, he's calling it. And then the final phase is like to define everything. And he said, I need to get into that final phase still in with a chance. So he's like, these 6 games are to keep us in with a chance as we recover. And I mean, he's recovered, right? Because 4 points from these 2 games is huge. If he had lost in Uruguay, or if he had taken no points from this combo, all of those press conferences, those 1 hour long press conferences with the ancient Chinese proverbs and quoting Pat Riley and all of this stuff he's been doing, that would fall flat on his face, right? You wouldn't believe the guy. You'd be like, oh, he's just selling us smoke and mirrors and he's not really backing it up. The fact that he did all that and Paraguay got 4 points, beat Brazil. He's only the 3rd Paraguay coach to beat Brazil in a World Cup qualifier. Now it's like everybody believes. And I think I spoke about this before, that the main person he needs to get on side is Julio Enciso, because Julio Enciso is the talent that's going to get you there. Diego Gomez too, but Diego Gomez kind of will work for anybody. Julio's more like a mercurial character, let's say, right? And you can see he's on board now and he's believing. he gets subbed off. And when he was getting subbed off by Garnero in the Copa America, he was like crying. He was throwing stuff. Even with Harasayer, the same thing. He got subbed off against Brazil and no problem, right? Because he's understanding, or he's kind of building in and growing into this whole kind of culture that Alfaro is building. And I'm fascinated, by the way, by the psychologist as well, because remember, we spoke a lot about his psychologist that he brought down for this. And you've seen a change in attitude, a change in culture. And I'm like, really? Can a sports psychologist do that so quickly? They were basically together 3 days before they flew to Montevideo. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a combination of a lot of things, but certainly you've seen a big change. And the most incredible thing is obviously that change is not just in the players and the staff around, but it's also the fans, because we saw a sold out Defensores del Chaco for the first time in a long time, and everybody getting around, people singing Ole as Paraguay is passing the ball around. I mean, there hasn't been an atmosphere like that for years. I really can't remember the last time. The last time I can remember being in a qualifier that Paraguay win, and it was a big game, was when we beat Chile, who were at the time Copa America champions. They came with like Alexis and with Vidal and everybody, and they were saying, oh yeah, this is going to win. And I think Oscar Romero scores really early on. Paraguay win 2-0, 2-1. But it was that kind of atmosphere whereby you guys are coming here, but this is our house and we're going to win. And by the way, really interesting point, Paraguay have taken 10 points from the last possible 15 in home games in the World Cup qualifiers. So you go back all the way to the last cycle, right? And including Ciudad del Este, that final game against Ecuador. But 10 points from 15 is not bad for a team that was struggling. So now that we're on the up, I think watch out Venezuela and watch out Argentina, who are the next two teams that are going to visit Defensores del Chaco.
But also watch out Ecuador, because that's the next game that we'll have in Quito. And that's also, obviously, when we talk about it next month, that's a redemption game for, and a special game for Gustavo Alfaro because of his impact of changing a team that was kind of in chaos. Now he's trying to do something with his Paraguay side. And so it's kind of deja vu. But we'll get to that when we get to it next month. Let's talk about what we saw from the two games. Let's go first to Montevideo. And I think a lot of question marks even began before the game even started, Ralph. I'll go to you first, because obviously when we saw the team set up, we saw, there had been some question marks. And even you said in the lineup that, this was a team that needed to really depend on a lot of, new players and players who haven't really gotten their big test. Certainly we did see Pita get the start. You had even questioned that maybe it was time for Tony Sanabria because of him coming back onto the squad. He didn't get the start at the end of the day. We also saw someone like Damian Bobadilla get in, which I think is also a demonstration of how much he's kind of improved ever since going to São Paulo from Cerro Porteño. The back line, as always, there was always question marks about what the best lineup could be. Obviously with having Gustavo Gomez back on the team and Omar Lerete, Junior Alonso actually getting the start at left back. Many people were questioning if it was going to be someone like Dani Rivas, maybe someone like Blas Riveros, and Gustavo Velasquez getting the right back position. So that's obviously what we saw from the defense. And of course, in goalkeeper, he trusted with Gatito Fernandez. Everyone was saying maybe we could see someone from Coronel, because he obviously played the qualifiers, maybe even from Juan Espinola, because he, hasn't given their chance. Fede, you even mentioned it as well, that you wanted to see maybe Juan Espinola getting the chance, but Alfaro, I guess, probably listened to us and thought, no, I'm gonna mess with their heads, and he changed the entire lineup. So just before we go into the game itself, I think from the way that Alfaro set it up for his first ever team as Paraguay manager, kind of surprised us a bit. Let's be honest. I was really surprised. I looked at this line and was like, okay, maybe it's not what I hoped for, but again, and of course I was surprised from what we saw later on, but initially I was skeptical, and I think a lot of us were as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise was he went with the back four. Well, I was assuming he'd do the back five, which he kind of ended up doing with Costa Rica and Ecuador towards the end. But he went with the back four, but then with four central defenders. And it was like, is this Berizzo? What's going on, right? We've seen this before. But by doing that is very interesting. He did that, but then his midfield line is he wanted them to press much higher. So it became a very different kind of style to what we saw. And in build-up, it's totally different, right? In build-up, he's not looking for slow build-up. It's moving the ball forward quickly, which again is totally different to Berizzo and Garnero, maybe more similar to Barros Schelotto. But it was a really interesting, I think, combination the way he did it. By having that back four of four central defenders, I mean, Paraguay were just so dominant in the air, which is again classic Paraguay. And what we saw, and that's what they were doing, was squeezing so well with the midfield, right? So it was like Almiron and Enciso were picking up the wide players, the fullbacks, and then you had this like squeeze of Cubas, Bobadilla, and Gomez, but they were defending flat. So it's really interesting, right? Like Valverde and Ugarte were coming deep to try and receive the ball in the build-up, and they were like, "Fine, have it. Like we're not going to go and press you there." And so we're not leaving any space. And suddenly, I think Uruguay didn't really know what to do. They end up trying to work the ball wide, crossing in a lot, and you've got four central defenders. So Paraguay is dominating and defending pretty much everything. Sure, they ride their luck a bit though, right? Because Suarez hits the post, and the way they wanted to attack Paraguay and be quite intense in the press or have quite a high press means that okay, you are going to leave some space at some points, and it was like, I guess, a calculated risk that Alfaro wanted to take with that. But ultimately, it was really interesting. He kept talking about the intensity, but the real intensity had to be in CISO. You're going to have to become like a defensive player without the ball and defend the flanks and not hang around in the middle where he likes to be. Almiron did that as well, like he was playing for Rafa Benitez or Steve Bruce again or something. But then to the three, like, and Bobadilla was excellent in this. It was like you have to be so what's the word, disciplined tactically and positionally. And there's one point where Bobadilla gets sucked into Ugarte to try. So Ugarte is trying to pick it up from the centre backs, and Bobadilla wants to go, and he must have got screamed at because he doesn't do that again in the game. That's like after 10-15 minutes. He doesn't ever do that again. And after that, it's just, Bobadilla hardly has a duel, by the way. He's like hardly involved in ball winning because that's all Andres Cuas. But the fact, the way they're defending that like three and squeezing Uruguay, they just made it so difficult for them. And honestly, as the game went on, you never really thought that Uruguay were going to score, and Suarez less and less. I know he hit the post, but everyone was there hoping for him to score his last goal, in his final game in the Centenario, and it was just not going to happen. And by the end, he gets booked. I think his last action in a Uruguay shirt is getting a yellow card, and that was just the frustration because Paraguay defended it so well. They were so well organized.
We had the best chances in the Centenario, guys. After the game was over, I was thinking, hey, we had the opportunity to win here. Why didn't we win? Well, actually, Alfaro tried to do it in those last minutes, right? I mean, all subs that came in were attacking players, and that's something that really caught my eye, because that's the message that the coach is giving to the players, that we're in this game. It's 0-0, it's tight. Yeah, Uruguay's looking for it, but we're playing better, guys. And I think that's also very important from Alfaro in the way that he communicates with the players, and he's giving them that confidence. He took the pressure off of them before the game, saying, if you're going to say something, say it to me. He did it in Defensores de Chaco also against Brazil. And I think that was something that, these last coaches weren't able to do. And the players really knew their game plan. They knew who they needed to cover. They knew that they didn't need to attack in every single game, in every single play. And they were really smart about it. And I think that was something big in this game, that the players knew what they needed to do. There was a game plan behind it all. And the defense really played really well. I'm totally with that on Ralph. It was four central defenders, but There was a fifth one like Andres Cuevas. I mean, the game that Andres Cuevas played, I mean, I thought we were gonna have a hard time without him against Brazil, and because of all the balls that he gets back and how aggressive he is, that we don't have another one like him. And I think he was all over the place, just like many other players. I mean, Isidro Pita, another one. He was running all defenders, wasn't letting them have the ball that much, and he was pressing in midfield. And after the game, you heard that Almiron and Enciso were the ones that ran the most, and that speaks volumes, right? Of just the sacrifice behind it. And that's what Alfaro wanted from everyone. He wanted a team to be organized. He wanted a team to have balance. And obviously, we were gonna defend because we weren't coming in with the right mindset lately in these games, and we haven't been able to score lately. So the most important thing going into this game for me, it was not letting them score, not letting them have many opportunities, and we did that just perfect. I mean, how many chances did they really have? That shot from Suarez, maybe an opportunity from Valverde. Valverde did absolutely nothing in the whole game, and we're talking about a player from Real Madrid, just like Vinicius against Brazil. Um, we got to give props to our players. I mean, every single coverage they really did well, and Paraguay had way more shots at goal. We made over or close to 300 passes. That was something that I was blown away because we didn't have the ball that much, but the opportunities that we had, we were going forward. And after that first half was over, I was grabbing my head because Almiron had the best opportunity, guys. I mean, and to me, it was back all over to why is Almiron in this game? Why is Almiron starting again? Why are we giving the confidence to this player that he had so many chances before, even in the Copa America? I mean, he had the best opportunity to score on this team, and he didn't come through. And it was that first half, and he didn't take him off. He gave him that confidence, and Almiron just played two fantastic game, guys. And after what I saw from Miguel Almiron, I even got to say it. I'm really sorry, Miguel. I mean, I wanted to take you out of this team, but Alfaro found a way to make it happen, and he found a way to get the best out of Miguel Almiron in both games, and to see him sacrifice the way that he did in those defensive coverages and picking up the ball and taking the team out there, even having the best opportunity, like I said, against Rochet. I mean, I was really happy with what I saw against Uruguay, Roberto, and you could see that there was something to build from there, and I believe that that locker room was fired up after that game, and they knew that they could do something against Brazil. They found their confidence after that 0-0 draw.
I think they needed that too, because I think certainly if they had gone into this game and ended up losing, I think it would have been a whole different scenario and a whole different mindset going into the Brazil game. But yeah, just I think this was the game to really get a result. And like I said, I predicted a draw because I felt like, this was going to be, backs behind the wall. And I agree. I thought Paraguay had some chances to actually win this. Certainly it was disappointing from Miguel to kind of miss that one-on-one with Rochette.
Two shots on the post, right? Or
The
one,
post.
two, it was, right?
Diego Gomez hits the post as well. I think Enciso, he had some space there. Maybe he could have passed it to one of the players, or maybe he could have been a bit more straightforward with it. So yeah, there were chances there, and of course Uruguay had their chances too. So it's not like we were completely dominating, but again, I think against a team like Uruguay with this manager, Marcelo Bielsa, I think if I'm not mistaken, guys, I think this is one of the few times, maybe the first time in the qualifiers that Uruguay have dropped points in the Centenario since Bielsa was in charge. I have to double check, but that's a big result in itself, and to do that against one of the most tactically astute managers in world football is testament to, and especially against this Paraguay team, I think it's testament to what Alfaro really was able to impose on this team.
Yeah, and you were hearing before the game. I mean, I was really moved by the way that even some Uruguayan journalists were talking about our national team, just saying, but we're going to get the 3 points. This is an easy game. Nobody was respecting us at all before this match. And they were even saying, yeah, we're going with the subs. We're missing about 7-10 players. We don't care. We can still do this against Paraguay. And it wasn't like that. It was not an easy game for them. You could see that Bielsa was not finding the way around Alfaro's game plan. And I think that was huge. I think when you saw Alfaro put that team out there and you had your doubts, just like you said, Roberto, Roberto, about certain players. I had it also, but when you saw that every player had a mission and they knew what they needed to do during the 90 minutes, and when I saw those subs coming in, Kaku, players that wanted to win the game, I was really happy, and I thought that that was the first step moving forward, and that's what I thought I wanted to see. I think he even saw more than what he expected to see, Ralph, because this team had not shown that fire in them lately. So I thought it must have been really happy from that first performance.
Yeah, because it was like we're saying that idea of how do you change this mentality and the culture, and basically a culture of losing because of the Copa America. I mean, it's a very similar group of players that got 0 points in the Copa America. There's not like huge changes. One huge change, of course, Diego Gomez coming in, which I think when you talked about Almiron, one thing that used to happen with Miguel Almiron is he had to be basically himself, a Diego Gomez kind of role, and an Enciso kind of role, wearing the number 10. He had to do try and do so many jobs in a Paraguay shirt, and it was never coming off for him. I think now he's got that role where it's much more limited, and it is quite defensive and sacrificial at times. But you know that on the other side, you've got Gomez and you've got Enciso that are going to help you kind of move the ball forward, and it's not just all on your back. So I think that's another huge thing for Almiron. Firstly, to accept that he's not the guy, because Gomez is going to have possibly a better career than him, and Enciso is more talented than him. So don't worry, you're not the guy. But also to then be confident that, well, actually, I do have these players around me that can help me, and I'm not having to do everything to carry the team forward. And one thing I put in the chat there, about the aerial dominance of Paraguay. Uruguay forced 8 corners, but they only generated 2 attempts on target from those corners, and they were pretty lame headers. There was nothing that I remember standing out. So again, it was just the way that Paraguay didn't feel like they were going to concede, and that's been something that actually has gone on for a while. I mean, I know we don't say this team's been very good, but apart from the Garnero time where they were just totally open and conceding these goals in 5-minute spots, they've still only conceded once from open play in the qualifiers, which was a mistake when Otamendi scored, and then the other 2 goals have been penalties. So I mean, they really have been very good defensively. That's never been the issue. And that was my one doubt after the Uruguay game, where I saw a good game, but I was like, it's still only 1 point. How are we going to start scoring goals? We don't have. I thought Peter, by the way, I didn't think Peter started very well in Montevideo, but then by the end of the game, I was like, whoa, okay, this guy, he's getting it now. But he seemed a bit cold. Of course, it was his debut, but he seemed a bit cold in the first 20 minutes or so. But then he really grew into it. But I also wasn't sure, is that going to be the guy that scores me goals? Because he's scoring goals, but a lot of penalties if you look at his stats. So it's is that where we want Arce, or do we want Sanabria? Because he's actually, I think, one of the higher goal scorers in World Cup qualifiers for Paraguay, with three World Cup qualifying goals is a lot for a Paraguayan. So I was having my doubts, but then I'm sure we're going to talk about it now. In the Brazil game, you just see a wonderful performance in holding up the ball, and we were very different in terms of attacking and going forward.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the good balance to have, and obviously he was able to build up against Brazil. And let's go to that one, because that's the big game that happened on Tuesday in Asuncion. I think, Fede, going to you again, it was a very smoky day. It was a smoky day in Asuncion. There had been some wildfires actually in the countryside in the Chaco that had been building up. So, it felt like it was kind of something out of a movie, and it really was. The whole game itself, but it was building up, Fede, just pre-game. I'm sure you kind of felt that way going to the stadium, just seeing everyone with Paraguay shirts. There was that feeling that what we saw in Montevideo was not a coincidence. It was something, and more so with Brazil. Yes, they got the 1-0 win against Ecuador at home, but they were actually jeered by their own fans after that. That's very rarely done to a Brazil team after a win. Yeah, if they lose, if they draw, they get jeered, but after a win, 1-0 to Ecuador, I mean, that felt like, okay, we can get something. And I think certainly there is that sort of sense of revenge as well after they did, beat us 4-1 with a lot of the same players. And, I was there, I was at the ground, and it was embarrassing to see. So I just looked at there and I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to get embarrassed again. And I think a lot of these players knew the same thing. And I think, yeah, just from what even Gustavo Alfaro said before the game, he said in the press conference after the win, he said, it's been a long time since you've been able to get a big statement win in Defensores del Chaco. Wouldn't it be nice to do that tonight? Wouldn't it be a really great time to do it? So it was really building up. It kind of felt like, like Ralph had said in the beginning, like, trying to recover our identity and to make the Defensores del Chaco a fortress like it was in the old days when they made it to all these World Cups. So yeah, I just want your thoughts firstly on what you saw just pregame. And if you had that sense, again, I know you predicted a draw in that one, and I think Ralph even did it as well. I predicted the 1-0 win. But did you feel like after what you saw pregame that you felt, yeah, something might build up, something special might happen tonight?
Yeah, I did actually, because just like I was mentioning, Alfaro had the right strategy. He was getting the players by his side. He was getting the right mindset from them, and we had certain problems. I was thinking about who's going to play for Cubas, who's going to play for, how we're going to do it with the defense, who's going to attack by the sides. Is going to be Juan Casas? Is he going to put another left back? Yeah, I was thinking about more of the team than the attitude, because I already saw the attitude, and I think that's what convinced everybody after the game against Uruguay to go and buy the ticket, to buy that entrance and go and be by their side. And everyone really put on their Roja guys. I mean, everyone went with their jersey. So that shows how proud you are of your team also. When you go to the stadium and you put on your national team jersey, you do it with pride. And I think a lot of people had that sense before the game. And Alfaro, just like I mentioned before, he was really smart in press conference to not put the eyes and focus everything on the players, focus more on the strategy, put the press into talking about who's going to play, and not talk about Julio Cesar's not passing the ball. This player did not show up against Uruguay. Gomez could do a lot more. And people weren't talking about the bad side of it. People were looking at the positive things that we saw against Uruguay. And I think that's what kind of built the whole atmosphere. And you can see me being there at the stadium that, I mean, Brazilian fans were not at all by their team. We were really rooting for the Roja to come back, but you did not feel that from the Brazilian fans. I talked to several of them before the game, and they were really down after what they saw against Ecuador. They were not convinced what they saw from this team in the Copa America, and they really had very low expectations. I think Enrique was the only big name that they threw in there in the lineup just to kind of have some motivation with Vini and Rodrigo. They started with those three in attack, but I mean, the rest of the team did not convince them at all. So I was really confident going into this game. I thought a draw was actually a good result in the preview, but then when you saw Brazil not having much ideas, and we were able to score very early with Diego Gomez. We had more shots at goal in that first half, even though we didn't have the ball that much. But it's the style of football that we're accustomed to seeing. This is the Paraguay DNA, like some like to say, a team that doesn't have the ball that much, that's very aggressive, likes to pressure. This is kind of the team that we saw also in a way, just like Alfaro was mentioning, going back to the roots in that team that we saw in Paris, in the Olympics. I mean, this was a very similar team in the style of that they played. Besides the fact that these guys played with their hearts, that they played with a lot of garra, like they like to say here, and they really outperformed themselves. I mean, there's nobody that you can point at in this list to say this guy didn't play his ass off. Everybody did, and it was a collective win, guys. I mean, that's what really got me happy, that it wasn't just, no, it was Diego Gomez night. No, it was everyone's night. Everyone really chipped in this game.
Yeah, you looked and everybody had a good performance, because people were saying, "Oh, Juan Cáceres has had such a great game against Vinicius," and then like Junior Alonso was so strong, and then you're like, "Oh, the centre backs were so good," and then you just name everybody basically. So like Fede says, I think collectively it was so good, and it's really interesting if you remember. So we talk about Brazil coming in not playing very well, and being a team that maybe this is the good time to play them. that happened a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. And we were the team that gave life to the other one. I remember going to Chile and we're like, this Chile team is so bad. Like, we've got a chance now. I think it was when Berizzo was still coach, or maybe Schelotto and Berizzo gone to Chile. I can't remember. But basically, it was a game where we had a great chance. And it was 0-0 at halftime. And it's like, okay, second half, maybe we can just get those points and kick off our career, our tournament or our qualifiers. And we lost 2-0. And I think we've seen it against like Peru when we drew at home, or Bolivia when we drew at home in previous qualifiers. It's like we were giving the chances back to other teams that were meant to be dead. And now we're the team that's meant to be dead, and we've come alive again. And so it's such, again, testament to what Alfaro started to do here with that mentality and with that culture. And for sure, Alfaro is a bit of a gambler, right? You can tell. So the way he talks about the team beforehand, the substitutions that he makes, the attacking substitutions, he's a bit of a gambler. But it paid off this time because Diego Gomez's goal was the first shot Paraguay had in that whole game. So in 20 minutes, the first shot is Diego Gomez's, and what a great shot it is, right? And it's really interesting to see now. He scored, I think I was looking, he scored like 3 goals in his last 5 or 6 games from outside of the box. And it's all different competitions, because he did it in the Olympics. He did it, I think, in MLS or Leagues Cup, and he's done it now in World Cup qualifiers. I mean, he's producing this now more and more regularly. And if Diego Gomez starts scoring goals outside of the box, then it's just like another weapon he has, because he's the player that had the most duels in that game. He was all over the place. It was the same. I mean, Bobadilla and Villasanti. Bobadilla had to now play a different role because Cubas was out, right? And Villasanti had come in, but Bobadilla had to get much closer to Villasanti and help him, and not be pressing quite so far forward. And I mean, it was a team. They're 2 Brasileirão players against 3 Premier League midfielders in Bruno Guimaraes, Andre, and Paquetá. And they dominated it. They really dominated them. And that's another interesting thing about that team. 5 of those Paraguay players played in the Brasileirão, right? Because Junior Alonso's there at the moment. You have Gatito, Pita as well. So it's like this the more Brazilian team is actually Paraguay, and they're out doing all these Premier League, Champions League stars who maybe they weren't ready for that kind of game, it seemed, right? They weren't ready for all of the fans, the fans, the smoky atmosphere, the fact that they were just going to get kicked and kicked and kicked the whole game, and in their face. And I mean, I was really impressed by Peter in that game against Magalhães, because obviously I watch Arsenal play a lot, and Gabriel Magalhães, he's like one of the most aggressive defenders in the Premier League. He loves it. He loves that kind of contact. And Arsenal had the best defense last year. But he wasn't feeling against Peter. I mean, Peter was really roughing him up, and he didn't seem very comfortable. And I think just that whole intensity, which like Alfaro was preaching before the game, it really showed up there, and it paid up. And it was like Fede was saying, it was like a classic Paraguay performance in the Defensores del Chaco. Back to Tata Martino, we saw glimpses of it in the Olympics. Oh, and by the way, that's one thing. Four of the team were in the Olympics, maybe. And let me just say, Gatito, Balbuena, Enciso, Gomez, right? So 4 of that team were in the Olympics. I think that's an important point too. But just so much came together for that. And a similar thing that we were saying in the Uruguay game, as the game goes on, they don't look like scoring. And Brazil, so as the game wears on, they're just running out of ideas, and they're looking less likely to score. Even when Paraguay are throwing on Cuenca and attacking players at the end of the game, which I thought was crazy, by the way, like Blas Riveros, why, But that was, again, Alfaro. He gambles a bit, and he was thinking, I'm going to look for the 2-0. I'm not scared about the 1-1, which is, again, talks to this whole mentality and this change in culture.
Yeah, and I think it really got to the sense. I mean, by the way, 0.05 XG on that goal. It was, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how. I've seen Diego Gomez score from from long distance, but I don't know how he did it, doing it with, they say it's we say triple in English, they say the el tiro de tres dedos in Spanish, but I don't know what he did. I think what was funny too, and I think Ralph, you mentioned it out. You had Julio Enciso calling for the ball, but I think Diego was like, "No, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try this," and he did it against one of the best goalkeepers in the world in Alisson. But yeah, I mean, Fede, I mean, when that goal hit, it probably was. You probably felt like it was probably the loudest the Defensores has felt in a long time, because not only to score like that, but to do it against Brazil, against Alisson, and all, like I said, all these stars, it was probably very special, wasn't it?
I saw Diego Gomez against Uruguay kind of contained, guys. I mean, he pretty much didn't take the ball forward that much. And against Brazil, you could see that after those first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he wanted his chances and he was starting to link up with Julio and Cesar because they were playing by the same side and they really understand each other very well. And I think that was starting to be a problem for Brazil, and he was just gaining ground and you could see it happening in the game. He was moving forward, and yeah, a lot of people go really hard on Julio Enciso because he doesn't let go of the ball, but he held that ball about 5 seconds, and that gave enough time for the rest of the team to set up an offense. And we had our left back who gets the opportunity to put the ball back into Brazil's box, and that's when Diego Gomez takes the ball. He's already in the attack mode. The team's already set up there, and we had that opportunity. We had a lot of rebounds. We had a lot of second chances because of that situation. Because the team, when we didn't have the ball, yeah, we were defending. But when we had the ball, we were looking to get out there, to get close to the Brazilian box, and Diego Gomez just got inspired, guys. I mean, just to fake out a guy like he did and to gain that space that you need to put the ball with the effect that he gave the ball, it was just magical. And I would even say you need to score like that to score on a goalkeeper like Alisson. I mean, you have to put the ball right there. You have to put it in the best possible way, because you're not going to score on a goalkeeper of that caliber. So for Diego Gomez, it was his first goal with the national team, and what a way to do it, right? I mean, and what a game. I was even looking at Cuenca also coming in, and I was thinking this guy's first game with the national jersey is against Brazil. I mean, talk about confidence, talk about getting the pressure off your shoulders, at least getting 5 minutes, and also guaranteeing a player that's been looked at by other national teams. That's why I think he needed to play at least a couple of minutes in these games. But I mean, talking about Diego Gomez night, I mean, you could see that in the second half, he was done. He had no more in him. He needed to be subbed out, but he gave it his all, guys. And Diego Gomez was a spark that we really missed in the Copa America. This is a player that I wanted to see with this jersey, and you could see that things weren't happening for him against Peru so long ago. He had the opportunity to debut back there. He was so close to scoring. He had the effect on the team. You could see that he's a player that's built for the national team. And now that I think he's getting the starting role, he's not going to want to let go of this opportunity. And you were seeing a player that's just evolving and evolving. I don't know. I don't know if he has that in him, the way that he shot the ball, or if he kind of gained that practicing with Messi, with Luis Suarez. I want to think that's just natural of him, because he's shown that before. He's such a talented player. He's such a smart player. And to fake out a player like that, a Brazilian player, and put the ball like the way that he did, I mean, everyone was going crazy in that stadium after that goal.
He learned it from Matias Rojas, Ralph. Let's be real. He didn't learn it from Messi or Suarez. He learned it from Matias Rojas.
Yeah, I'll take that. Rojas has been scoring those kind of goals, right, from a long distance in Miami. But that was another thing just to think about there. Again, we talk about it. For me, and Enciso is such a key player, and you talked about not passing to him, and it's because those two grew up together. They played together. They know each other. One is not intimidated by the other, kind of thing. Whereas sometimes you felt that without Gomez in the team, I think a lot of people not felt intimidated by Enciso, but felt like this is the guy I need to get the ball to. This is who we need to pass to make something happen. And now when you have Gomez as well, it's like, well, no, not necessarily, because I got Gomez too. And then you've even got like Sosa coming in. You've got Almiron playing there. So you have now suddenly a variety of attacking threats, which is what Paraguay has been looking for so long. Because I talked about Almiron earlier. For a long time, it was like the only player that can carry the ball forward is Miguel Almiron. That was for the last set of qualifiers, pretty much, right? So now suddenly you've got all this variety. And Enciso has a really interesting game. He only had 22 touches. Enciso is like a player that loves to get the ball, to touch the ball, to be involved. And he wasn't so much against Brazil. By the way, I don't think he played badly. He played well. He ran the whole game. But what I mean is he didn't get into that phase where he just starts dropping deep to find the ball and loses all kind of discipline, which we saw a lot in the Olympics when things weren't going well in the Olympics. And we saw for sure in the Copa America. I mean, there were times where he was picking up the ball like almost like a quarterback, right? To then try and start something. And so here you can see like he's believing in Alfaro, believing in the project, and that's helping the team as a collective overall because we're not dependent on one player, but we still have that player who's capable of at times, there was one time I think where he took it between like I think is maybe both Paquetá and Guimarães or somebody. Like he can take away from two players all of a sudden, make space. So it's starting to look much more exciting for Paraguay. And now I guess the big question going into Ecuador and Venezuela come out is going to be like where do I fit Sosa into this? Because Sosa has played 2 games coming on as a sub, and you can argue, well, he's been maybe tired. He's just made that move to Forest. Okay, but next month it'll be like, are we not going to play the guy that was the best player in the World Cup qualifiers up until this combo? Because it was Ramon Sosa, right? So there's going to be a lot to try and fit in around, like Roberto's mentioning, around the team, because against Ecuador, we're not going to have Diego Gomez because he's going to be suspended, and we're not going to have Junior Alonso either, which I think is easier to cover. But yeah, how do you also cover the Gomez position, which has been so key? So is that where Sosa comes in? We'll have to find out. But I don't know about you guys. Like I am just looking forward to next month. Like previously, I wasn't really looking forward to Paraguay games. It was almost like a sense of dread of what might happen next. And I remember in the Copa America, I was really looking forward to it. And after the first 45 minutes against Colombia, I was like, it's going to be a long week. And by the time I got to Austin, we were all tired, like not just me, or the other journalists that came. You could even see the players. Everybody was just like, we're so tired. And it'd only been a week. And now it's like, whoa, we can't wait to get back and do this all again.
That's something that this Paraguay team needs, Fede. You had spoken about that for a long time. I remember, my memory serves me right, that they needed a team to be united because we have seen fights and spats and just, there's always this, sense of, and, Ralph and I can attest, and you as well, Fede, you can attest because you've been to games at the Defensores. You see Paraguay after not getting the results that they want or them conceding, they're just always overreacting or they're arguing or obviously what we see in privately as well. There's those spats and there's just kind of this defeatist mentality. Alfaro comes in, obviously, with that track record, and of course having the team, the staff that he has, like the psychologist, is a big change. And in a week, we've gone from, dreading what we can see from Uruguay and Brazil to now feeling like bring on the whole world. Sorry, bring on the whole continent. Let's make it to the World Cup. We even saw it in after the game when Julio Enciso and Ramon Sosa were with Alfaro, and he's just like cheering, he's like encouraging him, he's hyping himself, like let's go, we're gonna go to the World Cup. Like that is amazing to see, that sort of encouragement and unity that we haven't seen in a long time from Paraguay, like you said, since the days of Tata Martino and back when they made it to all these World Cups.
Totally with you guys, and you can see that happiness. I got to see it really, really close because I was able to go down there to the locker room after the game. I hadn't been there in so many years because there really hadn't been a reason, and I didn't want to go down there to see a funeral. I didn't want to go down there to see the guys, in bad mood, and maybe take it up against us, because we've always been the press that's been criticizing them, that's been pointing fingers at some of those players. But I wanted to be by their side now that they're winning, now that they're happy. I wanted to be part of that feeling, and I got to hug most of those players, and you could feel that they got a weight off their shoulders, and they've been waiting for this situation for such a long time. And you have the mixture in that locker room, guys. You have the experienced players that have gone through it, that are frustrated, and you have the next generation, the new generation. Ralph just said that there's several players that were playing in the Olympics that are now part of this team. I think Julio Enciso was, in some of those statements during the Copa America, he even said it, we're taking over. Now it's our time. But it's not really just them. It's with the experienced players. They're going to make it happen. You have to combine those situations. You need Enciso and Almiron to come together like they did in a couple of plays to make it happen. I think Enciso is going to learn so much by playing with Almiron. I think he's going to learn more. I think he's going to learn way more playing with Almiron than he can learn right now playing with Ramon Sosa. Ramon Sosa is, starting to learn the European football, the tactical football, the tactical side of it. And I think Alfaro is going to be huge in that sense also, because he's such a tactical coach. He demands that from the players, and you could see that during the whole 90 minutes he did not let a single player relax in what he needed to do in the field. So I think he's going to be on top of those situations. He's going to try to make the players learn about tactical things, and do more and more plays as the time goes by. Obviously there's a list of players that didn't get to game time, and I was looking at that. It's Carlos Coronel, Juan Espinola, obviously the goalkeepers, Mateo Gamarra, Santiago Arzamendia, Dani Rivas, Alvaro Campuzano. Some of these were called out of emergency because of players that were injured, but Tony Sanabria, Adam Barreiro didn't get a single minute. I got to be honest with you guys. I saw Tony Sanabria being the first one to leave the locker room. He didn't look happy at all, because he didn't have a single minute, obviously, because he has one of the longest flights to Paraguay. But there was a sense that the group was together. There was a sense that, yeah, the group is united, and even the president of Paraguay was in the locker room. I don't know if you guys saw the picture. Even Santiago Peña wanted to be part of the moment. I mean, everything just kind of came together, Roberto, the whole country. And I think Alfaro wants to ride that wave. He wanted this confidence, and just like I said before, he got more than what he expected, I believe, out of these two games. And now against Ecuador, I think he's not going to relax at all. But I think he's going to look at this game playing away as a good draw, maybe. And obviously, he knows what it takes to play in Quito. So he's going to have a really good strategy behind it all. And he knows every single player that plays in Ecuador. He has them studied. So I'm really looking forward to this next game also.
And of course against Venezuela as well, especially since they got our number in the last game that they played over there in Maturin. So yeah, I think obviously there's a lot going on to the next combo. And ultimately, just in this entire qualifying phase, because we obviously saw Bolivia as well pick up 6 points in their 2 games. They beat Chile and they beat Venezuela. Now they're tied with us on points. We're only better than them with goal difference. And again, as much as we are getting all these points, we still have scored 2 goals in these games, guys. So I think I wanted to really close out after what even from a historic night in Asuncion, from what we saw, I think one of the better Paraguay games of all time, really. I mean, there's been a lot of great special nights in Paraguayan football. I think what we saw on Tuesday night is up there. But we still have a reality to face, that we are still a team that have only scored 2 goals in um in 8 games, 'cause basically we have the same goals as Peru, but Peru have not won a single game yet. So there is that kind of issue. And again, for all the positives, I think we want to close out with this. Like, what is some of the stuff that you want to see come next combo? I think first for me as well, I think we need to definitely get some more statement wins. And I think that was kind of the evolution of what we're seeing, like be solid defensively and then try to score. And I think Alfaro had put that. So I think from what I want to see in the next few games, and I think the game against Venezuela will be a perfect opportunity. I think, the Ecuador game, things can happen. Again, there's a lot of factors in there, and we have to wait and see what happens. But ultimately, I want to be a team that is able to score more goals personally, because I think, like Alfaro has said, getting a clean sheet takes you to the World Cup. So that is important itself. But I just want to see some more goals. And I think, certainly for a team that has a lot of attacking power and can do that, I definitely want to see that moving forward. So yeah, that's personally what I want to see next month in terms of what we saw in this combo, which I'm very happy for. But I definitely want to see goals. Ralph, what do you think? What do you want to see this time next month, even after what we saw in the last week?
Uh, well, I don't mind too much about goals as long as we take 4 points. I think if the goal was 2 points in my predictions was 2 points from this combo, then the next one has to be four because it's easier on paper, but also the fact that we did take 4 points from this very difficult combo. So I think 4 points. But also what I liked about Alfaro was, like I said, he played 5 Brasileirao players against Brazil. Against Ecuador and Quito, he needs to play Alex Arce up front. That just, I'm sure he's going to do it, but that has to be right the potential answer to the problem of altitude and goals all rolled into one. And I think it's that as well, right? Still using not just an 11, but really building around the squad and finding the right players for the right moments in the games, which he seems to be very adept at. And it's where Garnero failed totally, if you think about it, because just going back to the Brazil game that Paraguay lost 4-1 in Las Vegas, 9 of those players played it on Tuesday. That's a high percent. 9 of the 16, right? Because we're including subs. But that's a high percentage. It's pretty much the same players. But what Alfaro is doing is using them in their right positions where they're going to excel. And so I just want to see him keep doing that, move players around, and come away with 4 points.
I want to see more of this midfield, guys. I want to see this midfield evolve. I mean, Damian Bobadilla, Diego Gomez, and somebody else, right? In these 2 games, it was Villasanti, it was Cubas. I want to see more of this midfield evolve. And but for me, it's still the clean sheet. For me, it's still not conceding goals. I mean, I think that has to be the main goal for this team. And then we're gonna get our chances. We need to build that confidence back once more. It's game by game for us. I'm not flying high after this win against Brazil. Obviously, I am celebrating it for a couple of days because we haven't had this happiness for such a long time. But next game moving forward, we have to respect Ecuador. They're such a good team, and we never feel comfortable in the altitude. We got to be honest about that. We have to play in Quito now. We're going to have to play against Bolivia before the end of the year. Those are 2 games that we're probably going to suffer. We never win there. And I want that clean sheet. So if we have a clean sheet, I think we can win at least one of the 2 games. So I think the strategy behind these 2 games that we saw against Uruguay and Brazil is going to be very similar to the one that we're going to see in the 4 games that we have still in this year. Maybe we can have more opportunities. I think Almiron, I think, and Cesar are going to feel that freedom to play a lot more. They're going to feel better now because they have the confidence. I think Isidro Pito did a hell of a job fighting everybody out there. So I think he even earned his spot on the list again. I think most of these players will be back on the list next month, but we do have a couple of injuries. I mentioned Andres Cubas. We didn't say anything about Omar Alderete, but when Omar Alderete came out the game, he was being the best defender back there. So I think he won a spot also. He's the only one we have playing in Europe right now. So hopefully he does come back in just a month, just like Andres Cubas, and we have everybody available, Roberto. That's what I want. I want the whole list to be complete. I don't want any injuries from a month from now. And right now, it looks like we finally have a coach. It looks like we finally have around 9 out of the 11 starting players, and I'm really amazed by just how fast and just how clear Alfaro had everything he needed to do in these 2 games. So the way I see it, I'm just following Alfaro right now, guys. I mean, Alfaro's showing the way, and I'm riding the way with him.
The impossible utopia seems likely, guys. I think that's that's an expression to his book being the capture of impossible utopias. Maybe Paraguay is his latest one. We'll have to wait and see. But ultimately, we can feel very happy that what we saw from the game against Uruguay and against Brazil, that Paraguay will be very happy and feel very motivated that they are still on tap for the World Cup in 2026 as we close out another great episode for Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.